A warm welcome today to Vera. She's a friend for many years, a huge inspiration. She spoke at our 24-hour unit conference last year, and I think one of the most enjoyed and appreciated talks there. She's the CEO and founder of Veritas Ventures, really exciting new fund, investing in emerging technology projects, and comes from an incredible background working for the likes of 500 Startups, Rocket Internet, and so much more. Big fan of her work with the BMW Future Foundation. So please put your hands together for Vera.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. I think my favorite conference, or rather unconference I spoke at, was the one in Bali before the pandemic. I think it was January 2020, right? I really enjoyed that one. It was a good coincidence to actually be in the same place at the same time. That was a great one. So hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I hear you're having an amazing program ongoing, and I was asked to give a session on pretty much any topic. So without really knowing your interest or what you do, and please, feel free to interrupt, ask questions. I thought I'll speak about a few trends that I'm seeing, especially for the region where I'm based. So I'm based in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. Well, right now I'm actually in Germany. So I'm at my parents' house. This is a real background. I'm not in Dubai at the moment. So, but I'll speak about the region and three things that I'm seeing that are emerging there. And if it's not interest at all, we can also switch and do something else. Okay, Michael is giving me thumbs up. So sounds like, or looks like it might be interesting for you guys. All right, so, right, what do I see? Which trends do I see emerging in the region? So I think, and not just in the region, but in general, the silver lining of COVID, of course, is that a lot of big VC firms started looking at regions that they probably even never heard of. You might have heard of, in fact, today came an announcement that SoftBank invested into UAE-based cloud kitchen startup called Kitopi. So that's a new, very exciting announcement. And one that was even more exciting and really kind of brought amazing feeling in the community in the region where I'm based was when Sequoia invested into an Egyptian fintech startup a couple of weeks ago. That was the first investment for Sequoia ever in the region. And I was on a panel recently, and I even jokingly said that, probably a year and a half ago, Sequoia wouldn't even know where Egypt is, on a map. So this is really great news to see that big VC firms are looking at emerging markets, because that's where a lot of talent is based. And at 500, we always used to say, talent is everywhere, opportunities are not. And it's about bringing those opportunities to the emerging markets that's really important, or, or speaking to, at least people. And so the silver lining really is that now we don't have to go to Silicon Valley to raise. It's really, everything is accessible online. You can have conversations. I just spoke, in fact, with the, I don't know if you heard of Rare Breed VC. It's a new VC for underrepresented founders. And Mac and I had a conversation just 2 days ago. And he said he pretty much raised online. And that's really the beauty of it. Either you're a startup, fundraising from global VCs, or you're a VC itself. And believe me, it's hard, if not harder, to raise if you're a VC. And you can raise from LPs without having to travel to all the different countries, meet them. They might cancel an hour before. So as much as we're, maybe don't like being on Zoom all the time, but it really gave us the possibility to raise online, and people are open to it. So that's one thing. I really see big players moving into the region and looking at investing in Middle Eastern startups, which is a big plus for us. And I said, the two examples I just gave you was the fintech in Egypt by Sequoia, and just today, the cloud kitchen Kitopi that raised from SoftBank's Vision Fund #2. The second kind of big thing that I'm seeing in the region is the emergence of startups and the ripple effect from recent acquisitions. You're probably also aware of Uber having bought Careem a few years ago, Amazon bought Zook, then recently Delivery Hero bought InstaShop. So there've been acquisitions taking place in the Middle East, and that caused a ripple effect. So we call them the Careem cartel. Actually, people refer to the people who used to be with Careem, which is the local Uber that was everywhere in the Middle East. And the founders went on to build startups, not just in the UAE, in all of MENA. Yeah, somebody mentioned Bayud bought Dubizzle, exactly. So people are really, there are some people from the region here, that's good, or know the region. And the founders went, so not just build in the UAE, what's happening a lot is founders are going back to the countries. For example, the, um, the fintech startup I mentioned in Egypt, a lot of them are founders, a lot of them are people who actually were working for McKinsey, Facebook, and then came back to the country. So what's happening a lot as well, that people who went to work elsewhere, they're coming back to almost kind of give back to the country. So that's a lot what's happening in the region as well. And not just the ripple effect of having been with Kareem or other big companies that became big or startups, but also really going back to, be in MENA, or some even went back to Germany and founded in Germany, or even as far as Australia. So that ripple effect is really interesting. And I think, I don't know if there are founders on here or aspiring founders, I think I always recommend to, I feel like nowadays everybody wants to build a startup and it's really great, but it's really, really hard work. So I didn't really properly introduce myself, but I'll do it while I talk. So I've been on the founder side myself before with Rocket Internet. So and with Rocket, you kind of being pushed into cold water and you just have to swim or you're drawn. And I'm sorry to say that, but as a woman, it's even more difficult at Rocket because it's quite a male culture. So I've been on that side of the table. It's so hard to be a founder. Looking back, I think I was, good old school. I think I would almost recommend to start at a startup if you want to learn how to actually, this whole culture, how to be part of a startup. I think it's interesting to join a startup that's already, up and running, and then potentially, one day move and build your own, because it's very, very hard to build a startup. Usually, on average, we say 9 out of 10 startups fail. And it's okay to fail, there's no problem. And I think this is also something that I see in the region changing a lot, that we're losing the stigma of failure, that people used to, in Silicon Valley, failure is totally fine. You fail, you start again. In Israel, the same, people fail and they're just like, you're almost proud because you keep on pushing. Whereas in the region where I am, it's always a little bit of not a topic we like to discuss. Last year, things changed as well. So mental health became a big topic. Founders started speaking out about having failed before. And the startup I built for Rocket Internet closed down as well. I guess you could say it was a failure, but it was a big learning experience. I must say it closed down after I left, but that's a different story. So I was on the side of the table as a founder. And then, as Michael mentioned in the beginning, I joined Dubai government and was part of the team that built Dubai Future Accelerators. So joined the side of building the ecosystem in the UAE, and then joined 500 Startups, which is a VC from San Francisco. They're the most active VC that do a lot of small checks, and build the ecosystem in the MENA region and Russia. So launched an accelerator in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and also in Moscow. So and now I'm on the VC side. So it's really interesting, and I recommend it to many people who kind of really want to understand the whole ecosystem around entrepreneurship and startups. I think it's, I'd recommend to try to look at different things. If you feel you tried a startup and you love it, but you didn't really feel this passion every day, maybe you meant to be an ecosystem builder, which is equally important. Many times startup founders or startups can't thrive without an ecosystem there. What we see now in Abu Dhabi also happening, they're really trying to build an ecosystem, but you need to have more in place than just, let's say, an office space or a budget. So you really need to be able to attract talent by creating an environment that's where they can thrive and where they love to live. And you need to build up talent from almost kindergarten up, but definitely in high school and university. So maybe you meant to be an ecosystem builder, which is as interesting. Or you want to be investing in startups and potentially look at working in a VC, which is also very exciting. It depends what you want to do, which sector you want to go into, which region, which stage of startups. So there are different things. And whenever I talk to startups, I often give lectures on VC or how to pitch to VCs. And I always say, very important is to really do your proper research of who you want to pitch to. And a little life hack that I give to startups is write down all the VCs that you want to speak with, and then start from the bottom. Start from the ones that you don't really mind not getting money from, and you practice. Go from the bottom up. When you get to the top 5, you're so good that probably nobody will say no to you. of course, if the product works. So yeah, what else? Okay, I'm going a bit on a tangent. So I'm speaking about all the different things, but I was talking about what's happening in the region. So I mentioned the global players moving in. I mentioned the emergence of startups, and the third one, which I think kind of sets the MENA region a little bit apart, especially the GCC, is the fact that I think governments will actually be creating champions. So many times I remember that from when I traveled to the US with the government, we would say that we actually in the GCC in UAE we like to have the government on board because things move really fast. Whereas in Germany, for example, I have a German passport. You rather don't want to have the government on board, or in US even more. I remember meeting with people and they're like, we do not want to have the government on board because they really slow us down. So things are different. In Dubai, having the government on board or having a kind of a partnership with the government is usually something that helps you move faster. So I do think that the governments will contribute to creating a champion in the region, especially in the fintech space. Fintech is really big in the region. We have a lot of unbanked people. What are the statistics? I recently read that I think only 40% of the population have access to a bank account. And in Egypt, where this startup was recently funded by Sequoia, I think 2 out of 3 people do not have a bank account. So really, fintech, and especially if, we have a lot of sand banks being created. Bahrain started the whole process now in Dubai, at the Innovation Hub, at the FinTech Hive. You have, I think 50% of all fintechs registered in the MENA region are registered in the FinTech Hive in Dubai. So there's a lot being done. The advantage of having a young government, of course, is that you can change regulations and legislations depending on if you want, to work with certain people and certain startups, and you want to change, kind of attract innovation. And what the UAE does a lot, and the GCC is really thinking of diversifying the economy, going away from just oil, but really bringing innovation. And innovation is a big topic. In fact, there was a recent IMF study that said that if the GCC don't undertake reforms, the wealth might be depleted by 2034. So innovation is definitely something that the region is betting on. And innovation really is brought by startups. So the region is very open to attract, talent, startups, of course, in the sectors that are much needed there, which is, agriculture is huge, education, health. Health is really important. I mentioned fintech already, but health is equally important because on average, there are about 1.3 doctors in the region compared to about 4 doctors in Europe. So health tech and being able to access a doctor online really took off in the region, and it's being very successful. So what else? But of course, desalination is probably a very interesting sector as well. Everything that is connected to the issues that the region might be facing. And then let me see what does the chat say. Google School failed a few times. So people say they failed a few times. That's great. Please feel free to share your experience as well. That's a cool hack. I probably was referring to the Excel sheet I mentioned about VCs. Vera, can you share about your life story? Yep is asking. Okay, my life story. That's a bit long. We only have 45 minutes here, so I don't want to bore you guys with my story. But maybe it will be interesting for people to see that there is no just one way. You don't have to study a certain thing to then be something. I think we moved really away from that. My story is very, it's not, there's no red thread in it. I was actually, my very first career was a professional dancer. So completely nothing VC related at all. I danced Argentine tango professionally. Then, well, actually before that, I was always supposed to become a lawyer. So it was always in my family from the age of 12. It was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. Everybody felt like, great, we'll have a lawyer in the family. And then to the disappointment of my whole family, I became a dancer. So, really not good. People were not happy. And but I was happy, so you have to do things that are good for your soul. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. I had an accident, so I had to find a new path in life. And with that, I really like to encourage people to say, you don't, unfortunately, sometimes the universe does not let us go the way we would like to go. And I think it's important to accept, to surrender to it, and just say, okay, I thought this is my life that's meant to be. I really wanted to be a dancer, but it is not meant to be for me. So let's see what else is out there. What else could really attract, my interest and passion as much as dancing did. So I studied political science at the London School of Economics, and then went to become a consultant in the European Union. Worked between the parliament and a dance token, somebody suggesting. I would love that. That would totally be amazing. Maybe you can help dancers fund themselves. Yeah, that'd be great as well. We should create a dancer fund. Yeah, that's actually a great idea. And I don't know who you are, but I love your comments, so we definitely should talk. Oh, somebody thought I said dancers. No, I'm sorry to disappoint. Not dancers, dancer. And so I studied political science, worked in the European Union, loved it, was great for 3 years between the Parliament and Commission as a consultant, worked on interesting projects like the cruise industry had to, there were a lot of legislations and regulations that were put on the cruise industry after the Costa Concordia collapse in front of Italy. Some of you might remember, if you're European, what happened there, a big cruise ship capsized. And yeah, interesting times, a lot of lobbying. Loved it, but in the European Union, in the EU, in order to come to an agreement, it has to be done unanimously, and to get all those member states to agree on something, it takes forever. So after 3 years, I was like, it's too slow. I love the fast-paced environment, so I thought I want to be into the whole entrepreneurial environment. And at that time, the biggest kind of entrepreneurial scene was in Berlin, and Rocket Internet was really the builder of that entrepreneurial scene. So I applied actually on Twitter. I saw they posted that they were looking for somebody at Foodpanda, which was one of the food delivery services. And I applied, finally on Twitter. 2 weeks later, I had a job. I moved from Brussels to Berlin. Loved it. In a couple of months, Foodpanda became the best venture at Rocket Internet. So the HQ hired me away from Foodpanda to actually run the full global communications during the IPO. The IPO'd about 8 years ago or 7 years ago. And I was in charge of Asia, Pacific, Latin America, and the Middle East. Traveled to the Middle East for work a couple of times during that time, and loved Dubai. And I thought, okay, after the IPO, things are not as exciting, not as agile anymore. And I really love, working in agile environments where you can make things happen very fast. I do realize I love really this, building something quickly. So I said I want to go more into the entrepreneurial side of things myself. It was very tough because the typical Rocket founder profile is a white male with consulting experience and a good school. And there was a good school and consulting experience, but obviously I'm not a white male. Not even a white female, really, for many Germans. So was tough, but I said, okay, look, either leaving or send me anywhere. I was ready to go, be it anywhere really, Ecuador, Indonesia, South Africa. So they told me, okay, Dubai, there is a venture we're launching, and we need somebody to support that. So I moved to Dubai, helped them launch HelpLink. It's an on-demand cleaning service. And while I was there, I saw an opportunity for a beauty app. I knew that Rocket was building something similar in Brazil. So I said, let's share the IT resources. And I built that for you here. But of course, with a lot of hesitation, they finally agreed. And I built Vanya Day. If any one of you is from Dubai, so remember, Vanya Day was an on-demand booking app where you can book appointments online from salons and spas. It was actually very popular with men as well. 30% of my customers were men. Men in Dubai really like to take care of themselves. They know the shave very nicely. So yeah, 30% customers male. Ran it for about a year, loved it. And then the Dubai government reached out and headhunted me away from my own startup, so to speak. But with Rocket Internet, it is your startup, but your shares are minimal. So it wasn't really my startup. I wasn't going to be rich, of my Rocket Internet startup, that's for sure. It's like a single-digit shares that you get. And so I joined Dubai government to build Dubai Future Accelerators. And it was really the place to be at that time. where a lot of ecosystem players came together, and I loved it. It was a great experience. Launched by Future Accelerators. Maybe, I don't want to go into details. You can look up the by Future Accelerators. If you're a startup, also look it up, maybe apply. It's a super interesting concept. I still really love it and recommend it. It's, as an innovative company, you're being paired with the different, government departments in order, let me start over. So government departments have, if they have faced certain challenges, we would look through, all over the world and see which startups could potentially solve those challenges, and then put them together and let them work together. I feel like I'm having a monologue here, Michael. Don't you want to ask me questions? I feel like, I'm talking and talking. I'm getting tired. It's like, I don't know if it's even interesting, so, maybe to just end the Dubai government a couple of years, Dubai Future Foundation, which does a lot of innovative projects, and then 500 startups. And I spoke about 500 before already. All right, I'll stop here.
Amazing, and love to hear what your vision is for the future, what you're working on now, and what you're excited about.
Let me just read the comments quickly. People asking, we should talk about modeling and curating the most epic dancers to create NFTs. Oh, I love this. I really love this. We should talk. We should do that. Yeah. Can you NFT dancing? Probably, right? I don't know. That's really super interesting. Somebody worked at Price Panda. Oh, yep, you worked at Price Panda. That's cool. Inspiring journey. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Ankur. You follow the collective consciousness of the group very masterfully. Thank you, Natalia. Oh, you guys are so nice. I don't even know who is where. Is this international? Is this Michael? Can you give me some maybe insight on what the group is from?
So we run this master's program, sharing with people, on the new token-driven economy, and getting to hear from, experts and industry leaders from yourself. And, for instance, you'd be able to, listening to you be able to share your story and journey was super, super amazing and inspiring. Love to hear also about your new project.
So Veritas Ventures, Veritas is a play on words. It's, Veritas, if somebody speaks Spanish, so it's Vera Verita, but then Veritas and Veritas, it's like a little play on words. Veritas Ventures will be one day a fund, and I want to focus on well-being. I find well-being super interesting, and I want to look at 4 different verticals, of course, meditation, mental health. In fact, I am now advising a young woman who is building the headspace for the Middle East, so meditation app in Arabic with all the different dialogues, Lebanese Arabic, Egyptian Arabic, Saudi Arabic, super interesting. So I think this is very much needed because people are looking more to meditation and mental health apps. Then find the topic of longevity very interesting. A lot of us are want to live longer and healthier. And I was thinking, yeah, Europe is aging, but then, if you look at China or Japan, especially China, a lot of old people in Japan, they sell more nappies for old people than for babies, so it's a big topic, and a lot of people with money who are aging. So I think longevity is a super interesting concept as well. Food technology I find very interesting. In Dubai, around 90% of our food is being imported. So what can we do to become more sustainable? What can we do to become more, self-sufficient? Greening the desert, just producing our own produce, I think is where we really have to go towards. And future of work. And last but not least, maybe to a little bit lesser extent, I want to look at financial education for women, because men are usually on average, maybe not, not the woman here, but usually women are not maybe as savvy as men in terms of investing, day trading, what to do with my wealth. And I have a lot of women who approach me and ask, I want to become an angel investor. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what questions even to ask startups. So I think I'd love to invest in a couple of apps that actually do financial education for women, for everyone, really. I really want to make sure. I really care about diversity. I've been approached by a couple of women to join female funds that invest only in female founders, and I politely decline, because as much as I've try to support as many women as I can, but I think diversity is important. I want to invest in impact. It doesn't matter who is building that, be it a man or woman, or however you identify. I think it's really important that we invest in startups that are creating long-lasting impact and create change, especially in my case in the well-being sector, that I find very relevant. So yeah, Hopefully also one day I'll launch a podcast. I just checked my journals while I was packing up my apartment in Dubai, and I saw that I've been talking about it for 3 years now. Michael, I'm sure you and I have spoken about it as well. 3 years. If anyone on here wants to support me to launch my podcast, please message me, because it's unbelievable how I've been talking about it. I meet so many incredible people. I really want those people to be able to be heard, you know, not just the famous people, but really just normal people creating, making a difference. Of course, we need to think, how do you get people to listen to normal people? But still, you know, I really would love to launch a podcast, and that would also be under the Veritas Ventures brand. So it's going to be, you know, like I'm aiming one day, you know, hopefully, fingers crossed, to create this, you know, empire, if you like. You know, still need a partner for that, but to create something that will be a fund investing in impact startups. You know, so, you know, I care a lot about impact. Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to mention, in fact, then you also suggested I mentioned that yesterday. I judged, and I do that every quarter, an AI for Good innovation factory that the UN organizes. What they do is they support startups that are solving either one or several SDGs, you know, Sustainable Development Goals, with the help of artificial intelligence. So look into that, and they have those sessions regularly where you can pitch in front of a jury, in front of investors. So it's AI for Good Innovation Factory. And yeah, and if you're solving any SDGs with help of AI, I recommend you apply. I posted that on LinkedIn yesterday as well, and I posted the name of the person that you should ping for that. His name is Josh Choi. He's based in Korea. So definitely recommend you do that if you're an AI startup. What else?
Like, love, you know, learning so much from you and your insights and experience. Love to hear, you know, with all these amazing people that you've met and worked with, like, what were defining traits, like things that, you know, you've noticed, you know, successful investors or entrepreneurs or founders, or like secrets, you know, like from all of these people, including yourself, you know, how have you managed to really get to, you know, the creme de la creme of, you know, tech innovation and startup building, and, you know.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I think some of the traits that are really important are definitely perseverance, you know, not to give up, resilience, really go when it gets hard, you know, and it's really hard, especially if you're building a startup. It will get hard, you know. It's actually, Michael, can you just give me, like, what is the group? Mostly startups, mostly investors? What is the...
So, you know, we have some super experienced investors, super experienced entrepreneurs, and some people who are just getting into entrepreneurship. Many of our Unit Masters program community are interested in the token economy. So, you know, as you know, Unit is powering the token economy, where in the future, everything, including your fund, will have a token, and everyone here in our Masters program will be able to buy a piece of your fund. And then they're going to support you, not just because of, you know, you're so amazing and inspiring and talented, but also because they have a tiny fraction of your fund. So similar to how you helped it rock internet public, in the future, every single venture, everything will be public in the form of a token. And I guess our master's program is educating and empowering people and sharing the insights that
okay. Well, I'm not sure if I'm being helpful then, if it's about tokens and all that. So it's a topic I'm still learning. I recently moderated a panel on NFTs. There was, you know, Dubai is becoming really a hub for everything crypto related, because you might know that, but let me just talk briefly about it, which I find super exciting. One of the initiatives in Dubai is a blockchain strategy on which I worked when I was with the BMW Foundation. So Dubai aims to become a paperless government, to be completely on blockchain by end of 2021. So in the next 6 months, Dubai is really pushing the blockchain strategy, to have every government transaction on blockchain, to not have any more paper, you know, to obviously save trees, you know, save paper, but really become an innovative government as well. So that's super interesting. And I think this is something that you know, new governments, and I mentioned before that, you know, if you are a young government, you can change legislations and regulations rather quicker. You know, Germany is far away from that. I mean, there's no way Germany will become a paperless government in the next, you know, 6 months. Sometimes you still have to send a fax here, you know, and I'm like, who uses fax still? Like, I don't even know how a fax machine looks like. So it's, well, I do remember, but you know what I mean. So it's completely, and I spoke on this panel, NFTs, if it's a hype, if it's real, I really think it's real. Shortly after that, I was actually present at the first NFT car in Dubai. A gentleman who runs the blockchain center has NFT'd a new car, a Tesla, in fact, and an artist from Finland, Vesa, came and invited me to be present while they were really putting his art on the car. So that was super interesting. another conference that took place right before that. So a lot of crypto conferences and blockchain conferences in Dubai. A lot also Dubai is becoming a hub for the whole region. So not just for MENA, but also for Africa. We speak a lot about Africa and crypto. I think Africa is similar to the, the GCC region, also have, young governments where they can change things very quickly. I think, in fact, Africa is leading in terms of mobile banking, if I'm not mistaken. Right? You were saying yes. Okay, perfect. So because everything, they're leapfrogging a lot of things. And I remember when I was at Rocket, they also leapfrogged a lot, like Jumia, the first unicorn in Africa, is a rocket company as well. What happened is that people went on, buying on mobile much quicker than a lot of Europeans. We went from kind of, phone with landline to, a big computer to a laptop to a mobile phone, whereas in Africa, they went to, mobile phone directly. So for them, mobile banking is something where they're not, they put more trust into it. They're not afraid. Whereas, probably many people in Europe, they're like, okay, let me just go to the bank and fill out the paper. So I think, this kind of the leapfrogging is super interesting. That's happening.
Your thoughts on ecosystem building too. So, how have you managed to, like build up, extremely vibrant ecosystems in Dubai, and, people are looking to build up their own hubs and community build. So like, love to hear your insights. How can people, get ecosystems thriving? And, Dubai has grown to be one of the huge startup hubs globally. So I'd love to hear your thoughts there.
Actually, you're right. Now you remembered me. You were asking me about all the different traits. So I spoke about perseverance, resilience, but I also think one important trait is to be able to surrender and trust the universe. If I would have fought against what the universe, like what happened to me, I could not be a dancer, I would have been, depressed for the rest of my life. So I think an important trait for a successful person in life is really, and thank you for the hearts, ladies, is really to be able to surrender to what's happening with you and to really trust. And it's something, so you probably guessed it already, but I'm also quite spiritual. I've done a yoga training, and I've been meditating, not as successfully as I would like, but like for many years. I'm actually just listening to an audiobook called Surrender. Maybe that's why I'm mentioning the word so much. It's a really good one by Michael Singer. I really recommend if you haven't listened or read it yet. Okay, some have, great. And it's really the surrender, the trust in the universe, the, breathing and kind of really just going with the flow, which doesn't mean I'm just going to, sit here and wait what happens. That's not it. You work, you do things, but you trust that if certain things don't work out, it's because it's meant to be. Certain people are being removed from your life. It's as much as it makes you really sad, but it's about acceptance and trust and, surrendering. So that's, I think it's a constant learning process. You never arrive, or at least I think, I don't know if I'll ever arrive at this point where I feel like, yeah, everything done. So I think another trait that's really important is curiosity. I think being curious about new things, learning about new things. Now I'm also super curious and want to learn more about NFTs. I have a friend, an artist, who's an artist in England, who also just spoke a couple of days ago. She's really became an NFT expert. So I think that space is super interesting, and I really believe in that. So being curious and continuously learning is an important trait for a person, no matter if you're a startup founder, an investor, or work for a corporate. I think that's important. I think, being an investor, what I find super interesting, and many, I think, investors don't realize, but you learn so much from founders. I love conversations with founders because they're the experts in their field. So every time I learn something new when I speak with a founder, who really understands the topic, it's also not always that you get, if you just start thinking about something, it might be not as interesting, but when it's somebody who really has been in it for a couple of years or maybe months, now things move much quicker and really understands the topic. It's very interesting to speak to people like that because you do learn a lot. So yeah, those I think would say the traits. And then what did you ask after that?
I'd love to hear maybe on ecosystem building, because many of the people in our master's program and our unit community are community builders. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how to build successful communities and have them thrive.
Okay, Michael, you probably know better than me how to build successful communities. You should be giving this talk, not me. I would love to hear from you. Once you do that, let me know. I'll join and listen in. But to build ecosystems, I think is important. And Brett Feld, I don't know if you guys read his book, but I really recommend. He talks a lot about building ecosystems. And I think this book came out 12 years ago, and then he had a second one that followed up. And he talks about a holistic view on ecosystems. where you have a startup founder in the middle, and then you have to create, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, it's great to have the government on board, of course, if possible, have the academia there, because that's where the future talent is growing. It's super important to educate investors, and that's what I also see happening in the region right now. People are, there are people with money, especially the younger generation of family offices, but they just don't know how to invest. How do you do it? So people tend to go to, to assets they know from before, like real estate. But, educating investors is super important. Back then at 500, I remember we brought investor education from Stanford to Saudi, where we had a lot of angel investors, institutional investors joining in and really listening how to become an investor, how to ask the right questions, how to understand which startup to invest to. So how to create actually your own investment thesis, how to understand what am I passionate about. So investor education is super important, because without, money, startups won't be growing. So that's important. Of course, also, for that holistic kind of circle, it's also important to work with corporates, because many times, not necessarily it's an IPO, or now then you think IDO, for startups, you actually you need to, the M&A, so you get acquired by a corporate, or you join them for, certain projects. So I think a lot of education has to be done with corporates as well, for them, to understand that we used to call it entrepreneurship training, how to get them to become more innovative, several departments to understand why it's important to work with startups, how to do it, or how to either, do the ideation internally, or bring in founders who are maybe already working on certain products that would be useful for those corporates. So you need to have, several players on board, and really kind of educated in order to create a holistic and fully functioning ecosystem. And it's hard. It doesn't happen overnight. Silicon Valley wasn't created in a day. It took years. We don't realize how long it took. It started way back, I think, probably, I think in the 70s really, or maybe even 50s, like when people started creating the ecosystem, and it takes a long time. And it's, I think what contributed a lot are the immigrants in, Silicon Valley, because you bring people with different mindsets, different points of views on things, and they come together and build a thriving ecosystem. And I think, and that's why, I love, diversity, and I'm really happy to see Germany is also changing in that. They started talking about diversity here, immigrant founders, and I'm an immigrant myself in Germany, so it's really wonderful to see that this now has is being put a lot of emphasis on, and is being really welcomed.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Vera. Like, super appreciative and grateful. We have a great question here from Anna, I suppose, before we wrap up. What's an initiative you've worked on that you're most proud of, and why? And love to hear your dream and vision for the future, whether it's personal or, for an industry. Like, love to hear your insight there. Yeah, thank you so much again.
What's an initiative that I worked on that was really interesting? Well, I think I really enjoyed working for Dubai government. This Dubai Future Accelerator, as I mentioned earlier, I thought was really interesting, just because we spoke with government departments before, like, the Road and Transport Authority, the Energy Authority, the Education Authority, to understand what the issues are. And I wished more governments would do that you really go inside those government departments and understand what challenges are you facing, where could we actually innovate, what would help if we would bring startups in and help you innovate, because R&D internally is very complicated and very expensive, and usually you don't really have, and I hate to say that, but I think many times it's true, people who are on a salary, they're not as innovative, they're not as agile, you don't really get them to move and work fast, because there will be a paycheck at the end of the month, so why rush? Whereas startups, and I'm building my own as well, so there is no paycheck at the end of the month. You have to be agile, you have to move, you have to be creative, you have to be innovative and fast, because you have bills to pay, right? So it's I think to create an initiative where you really would innovate internally in governments or in corporates, I find it's interesting, where you see quick results. I mentioned before, I really love building things that you can actually see results from quickly. So hopefully also the accelerators. I really loved launching an accelerator in Riyadh. It was a super interesting experience. I went to Saudi for the first time and see the changes happening. Women started driving during that time. The laws became less strict. There was no more, there used to be people on the street who would tell you kind of cover your hair, but then it was less strict. So going to Saudi was interesting. Going to Moscow, I really enjoyed launching an accelerator there as well, because I'm part Russian. So it was kind of going back to the roots, and spending time in Moscow was really great. The blockchain strategy is super interesting. I really want, to see how everything becomes, paperless government, and maybe bring that initiative to other governments. I'd love to work with more governments that want to become more innovative. I think in future that'd be really interesting. Really bring that experience and expertise to other places and create, build those ecosystems and create a better place for founders. Yeah, and I hope this is, I really, going forward, to answer your question, I'd love obviously to see Veritas Ventures become a success. I really would love to raise that fund. I'm looking for a partner still who'd be as passionate as me about well-being and has a track record in VC. So it's not easy to find a partner. It's as difficult as finding a co-founder for your startup. So very, very tough. And I really would love to launch a podcast one day. So that's maybe my goal for the next 6 months of this year. And just like being around inspiring people is, hopefully something that I will still be, have the luck to be around. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and grateful for your thoughts and insights, and looking forward to seeing you soon in the future, and yeah, being a
I just want to say, people who send direct messages, could you please maybe email me? Let me just put my email here, because I wasn't able, and some people, thank you so much, offered to introduce me to other people who run the podcasts. And I've already met a couple of people, but I think it's something that and that's another trait a founder must have. You really have to push yourself. Nobody else going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself, but it's so hard. Yeah. And thank you. It's wonderful to see the audience. People are nodding and agreeing, and it's been great. Hold on, let me just put my or maybe Michael, you have my Gmail. Can you share my Gmail with the people, and then on my LinkedIn, and then those who send me suggestions, please direct message me, and those who want to tokenize my story, please get in touch. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
To breakout rooms for everyone else here, so just setting up now, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye, Vera.
Bye.